I don't know, it was just like I hadn't seen her for a week or anything. Like, yeah, it didn't feel real.
Death takes everything eventually. It's the meanest, dumbest machine there is, and it just keeps coming and it doesn't care. There's nothing else to know about it, really.
Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic and you're watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I've been doing where I review new movies, old movies, talk about screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. If you're a big film person, you like film culture, you like to see people pick it apart, please consider subscribing. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty underrated Australian film, sort of a supernatural thriller, very underrated gem called Lake Mungo from 2008. We've got like less than a month left of Spooky Month, so we've got 3 videos left of me doing horror movie content. This is the first of those 3 videos, so we're kind of in the home stretch of scary stuff. And then we'll have to put away our skeletons and Reese's shaped pumpkins for the year, unfortunately. Now, Lake Mungo is not a film I was super familiar with until a few months ago when my dear friend Futura recommended it to me as a movie that I should watch. And she's one of the few people in my life whose film recommendations I will give into sight unseen, like without knowing anything about the movie. So going into this movie, I knew very little about it. At all. But I felt like it seemed to fit into the coverage for this month, so I decided to give it a chance to check it out. Lake Mungo is an Australian ghost story about a teenage girl who goes missing while swimming with her family and is eventually found dead, having drowned. In a documentary style, we watch as her parents struggle through the grieving process, but over time, they begin to experience paranormal disturbances in the house, leading them down a journey involving a manipulative psychic, disturbing revelations involving their daughter and their neighbors, and eventually the hard-won sense that their child spirit can finally rest. Plot-wise, Lake Mungo is not particularly special, though one particular curveball regarding their daughter's past did genuinely shock me. But it's not the story itself that I was impressed by so much as the specific way it's told. Now, like in general, horror movies don't really scare me very much personally. Like any movie that I would say is a horror movie that affected me when I was a kid. Any fear I feel currently as an adult is just residual fear from when I was a child. Generally, when I watch horror movies, I am not affected as much. I still enjoy them, I have fun, but like they don't scare me anymore, obviously. And I think that's true of a lot of people who are like movie enthusiasts. So many modern horror flicks like really heavily rely on like jump scares and employ sort of the same identical bag of tricks bluntly across all of their works. And as a result, you just become numb to that entire process. But writer-director Joel Anderson accomplished something truly fascinating here. Whereas a movie like Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon might weaponize the structure of the mockumentary to make metatextual critique of the horror genre, Anderson's attention to detail in recreating the true crime doc format serves to truly lull the viewer into a false sense of security that leaves them susceptible to real scares. So, confession, when I first put on this movie, I fell asleep during it because it has a very sort of like low energy pacing, but that is because I fired it up entirely too late at night and I was going to be tired regardless. So when I tried it again the next day in the light of day, the movie really started to go into work on me. I was very surprised in the way the film's documentary style worked in getting me to turn off the analytical part of my mind while watching the movie. Typically when I'm watching a horror movie, specifically this genre, I really pay too much attention to like the cuts and the camera work and like how the filmmaker is trying to scare me instead of just like kind of letting it happen. It's just like, I don't know, it's a failing of mine, I suppose. But watching this movie, because it's structured like a genuine, real, regular-ass documentary, it actually tricked me into the sense that I was just watching a documentary. Like, I'm a person who's not like a huge documentary person to begin with. I have to put a lot of effort into getting myself to watch more documentaries to like broaden my horizons. But watching this, I had the same feeling I get when I'm watching a regular documentary, and I turned off the part of my brain that knew going in that it was fiction. I genuinely started being engaged as if this was a true story, even though I knew it wasn't. Anderson and his team basically used a lot of less than popular actors so that all the characters would seem like regular people who improvised a lot of their dialogue and genuinely did act as though they were subjects in an interview when they were filming scenes, and the film was filmed on 40 different cameras in various formats to give the sense that this was in fact a real documentary, taking the often difficult to believe premise of most found footage horror and legitimizing it in a way similar films don't have the patience to execute. Throughout the film, when you begin to see shots of Alice, the missing dead girl, in the background of pictures or videos, it's genuinely shocking, with a few very specific reveals unsettling me in a way few films have in recent memory. But I think what is so interesting is that Anderson wasn't trying to find a new way to scare people, he was trying to tell the most inventive story possible given his extremely limited resources. And in telling a story about great grief, the film just so happens to mirror that process of acceptance by exploring the steps we're used to in a horror movie about whether there is or isn't something supernatural at play. It's a very difficult process to take a story that has this many twists and turns, make it feel like a real thing that's happening and not something fabricated for fiction, and then also manage to shock the viewer, surprise them, and get them to look back at scenes they'd already seen in a brand new way. By the time you get to the end of the movie and you kind of understand the full breadth of what is going on and what has happened, it really does make you want to go back over scenes and see things you didn't see before that were like, you know, planted there. And it's not in like a cheap, cheesy way. Like, it's actually like pretty carefully constructed and like really, really brilliantly realized. Like, to be entirely honest, Lake Mungo is not a film that I am like dying to watch again. It's not something I had a ton of fun watching, and as such, I'm a little bit hesitant to recommend it to other people to watch for the purposes of fun and entertainment. However, I do think it's a really fascinating movie to watch and unpack and pick apart because the way it is told, the types of techniques that are used are pretty impressive, especially for a movie that's like this cheap, is like this kind of like bargain bin plot-wise, like straightforward, like typical thing you've seen a million times in other movies. And to make that feel new and interesting is really powerful. It's weird. I don't think he's actually made like a follow-up movie, and like this is definitely like a great calling card movie to give to someone and be like, hey, here's what I can do with literally no budget. Imagine if you gave me some real money. But primarily, I'm impressed by the way he's able to use somewhat similar found footage techniques to other movies that have existed, you know, after the Blair Witch Project boom. And he's able to tell a story that works without having to make the big logic leaps and awkward sacrifices to quality that movies of that nature typically make. Like, the fact that he's able to make a movie that fits in the same general paradigm of those films and make it actually work, make it have emotional resonance, make it feel like it sort of matters, that's pretty impressive. And, you know, the kind of thing I think the genre needs more of. That's me on Lake Mungo. I think it's a pretty cool movie, and it's on Amazon Prime right now if you want to check it out, if you want to pick apart the way it was made. We've got a couple more videos coming back for Spooky Month, so keep an eye out for the rest of the week. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you have subscribed, hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos. And yeah, hope everyone's staying safe, wearing your masks, doing all that stuff. Figured out your costumes, I guess, if you're going to, like, I don't know, go on, like, Zoom trick-or-treating. I don't know what people do. Whatever. Have a good day. Bye.